Hi, welcome to another episode of TFT HyperRoll from Mission for Tuition, where I show you games that I'm playing and builds that I'm using in the hopes that it can make you a better player on this crazy road to hyper. The channel's called Mission for Tuition because we are trying to pay for our son's middle and high school tuition, because our son needs to go to a special school that is absolutely frightfully expensive. We don't take donations, we don't have a link or anything like that. We try to do everything 100% off views. So if you could put a like on this video, it will help it spread to more people. And with that said, let's do this thing. This game I started by picking up a Leona, and then quickly the game said, hey, remember that time you went Knights and Brawlers? Well, we think you should do it again. So here's a 2-cost Knight, here's a 2-cost Brawler, here's a Dragon's Claw right off the start. Let's get rolling! And it didn't stop there, as it was quick to give me a Giant's Belt just to play into continuing the tanky theme. I 2-starred the Gragas and then 2-starred the Leona. So I'm starting off with a 2-star Leona, 2-star Gragas, and the Brawler buff. Getting any buff early is going to be really good for your team, but to me it seems like the tank buffs like the Knight buff and the Brawler buff are extra good. At this point in the match, teams don't have the items or the champions that are going to be pouring out a lot of damage, so if you can mitigate that damage early, it's going to be very, very effective. And so far these fights are going swimmingly, as Leona is able to hold up and even just barely win this second fight. And obviously Riot really wants to see this happen, as it rewards me with a 2-star Nautilus, and it's really early for me to have 2-star Knights and a 2-star Brawler going in, so I am feeling good about this build at this moment. But of course I've felt good about builds before and then seen it all fall apart. And as I did in the last time I did this build, let me speed things up for you, because it will likely get rather boring watching these guys just slowly poke at the other team until the other team ends up falling over from the pure exhaustion of trying to take down 2 Silver Knights and 2 Brawlers. So it becomes a Herculean task for them at this point. The NPC round came along and said, hey, you know what you need? A chain vest. And then my difficult decision of Radiant items. The Rose Thorn will provide some nice armor and some reflective damage, while the Stone Plate is going to give slightly higher health regeneration, but the resistances will be dependent on how many enemies are targeting that champion. I opt for the Rose Thorn as the best item for here because it will pair well with the Dragon's Claw, adding to the overall resistance of the character and allow that Sunfire Cape to be even more effective. I even pick up an early Galio, and I am ready to roll. This team has the right idea with that Radiant Giant Slayer, but it might not be enough, especially with the reflective damage coming from Leona along with the Sunfire Cape's burn. She's able to just stand in, take it, and do enough damage with what's reflecting and burning to finish them off. Through the NPC round, we are lucky enough to get the components for a redemption, so we can keep the theme going of do not let Leona die. And once again, we will go into high speed mode, as this Gold Olaf is just frustrated trying to beat on that Gragas, ultimately summoned over to Galio just to be swarmed by a bunch of tanks and put down. Leona then moves in and stays alive with the amount of health regeneration she has going, and is able to stay alive for another fight. Now at this point I start to wonder if someone at Riot is watching, as they hand me a Negatron cloak, which will allow me to make another Dragon's Claw. And Dragon's Claw does do a little bit of offensive damage, because when someone uses an ability against you, it will turn around and do 30% of their health back to them, and that resets every second, which is pretty good. And as we continue to build up what I hope to be our impenetrable wall, I'm a little concerned because this team has double static shivs on it, which is going to be able to get through a lot of what the Dragon's Claw is doing. So I'm not 100% confident we're going to be able to get through until we start getting towards the end, and I can see that Sejuani is just holding up and able to stun and finish Senna. So my new best friend at Riot says, hey, I see what you're doing there, and you've got a tier on your bench. Do you want another Giant's Belt so you can create another redemption? And I said, sure, why not? In fact, let's create a wall of healing around Leona, because that will be really effective. In fact, why don't you upgrade me to a Garen as a knight so that I can make this team even stronger early on. Only a 1% chance to get a 5 cost, and it gave me the Garen. I love it. While the fight is happening in the background, I decide to go ahead and get rid of the Bronze Thresh for the Rel, because the Rel's going to help click Ironclad down the line. But I'm also looking up at the fight and going, yeah, this is a little bit of tanks against tanks, but they do have some damage. However, my tanks are just, well, tankier than their tanks, and so they're able to last longer and win the fight. It is at about this point in the match that I looked up at the scoreboard and thought, oh my, I have not lost yet. But this team I'm facing is pretty daunting. They have a really strong Nocturne, but he's missing a key element. And if you watched my video on this, it's the Rage Blade, which would allow his attacks to have gotten faster and faster. And while he's able to cut through most of my team, we're ultimately able to out-heal him and survive. During the NPC round, Rito decides, you know what, we're going to give you a non-tank item and see what you can do with it. And although Set just made his way into the match, I think it'd be better to just replace him with a Volley Bear, because Volley Bear has a way of completely wrecking another team's day by knocking them up. We find our gold 3-star Leona, and we're ready to go. We just have to figure out where to put the Rage Blade, so why not stick it on Garen and pick up a 2-star Nunu while we're at it. Now this team actually has some of the right items, but I just feel like they're on the wrong characters. That More Melicon on Kennen is going to do a lot of anti-heal, but having their Demon Slayer and Infinity Edge and Hand of Justice on Kled is just not going to work, because my team is just going to march through them too quickly. It might have had a chance on Tristana, but on Kled against this team, there was very little chance because it was all frontline and they're out. And with that, we are into the top 4, and I am reluctantly looking over to the scoreboard going, okay, yeah, this is where things usually go wrong. We 2-star the Galio, and not much we can do about positioning. This team really is just a giant wall. So we go into the next fight just hoping to hold on. Past experience with this build tells me that I'm likely to win this game, because when I lose, it's usually as a result of a tie, and since everyone is 6 health or under, I can survive a tie. Luckily, those Dragon Claws and Sunfire Cape are putting out enough damage to keep us in. We put in Rel as our final character to put in the Ironclad buff, and then of course Rito has now decided, yeah, you want another damage item, so we're giving you a Death Blade, and you don't have anything to say about that. We decide to go ahead and put the Death Blade on Sejuani. It's not going to matter who we put it on, because no one's really gonna scale off their auto attacks. Reposition a little bit, but again, it really doesn't matter. We're just a giant wall. What I'm hoping to do is to avoid the tie. I want to get through this with the full 20 health at this point. My 2 concerns in this fight are that Viego and the Aphelios. The Aphelios is absolutely perfectly itemized, and if the Viego manages to turn one of my stronger tanks, it's going to end up in a tie. But Leona is really strong, especially at gold 3 stars, and it's going to be incredibly hard to take her down, even with their assassin action and their perfectly itemized Aphelios. Once Sejuani is able to charge them and get them stunned, it goes very quickly from there, and it's GG for everyone and a perfect game with the Knights and Brawlers. Hope you enjoyed the video and try this build out. It's really good. Have an absolutely awesome day.